Well, folks, the time has come. Tesla earnings are on deck here in the next few hours. Want to react to a few things, kind of talk about Tesla stock price going into these earnings here. Want to react to this little 2-minute, or actually less than 2-minute video here, a Tesla earnings preview. This 1-minute video, profit margins and focus. Want to react to this one. There's no question the United States EV market is in a state of oversaturation. Looking forward to reacting to that one. And then last one I want to react to is this one, EV sales across America slowed down. So yeah, a very focused Tesla video here today. I will be going live here in the next bit of time on Twitch to live stream the entire earnings, market close, and the conference call with obviously Elon Musk and the team. So if you want to join me for that, that will be pinned comment down there. Now I'm going into these earnings with 1,700 shares in the public count. So obviously a big long position. This still is the second biggest position for me in the public count. And then I'm also going in with these earnings with these two put option contracts right here. September 20th, 2024 is when they expire. They're 255 puts. So far, they're off to a good start. Now, if you ask me, would I prefer Tesla stock to go up or down on these earnings? I would actually prefer them to go down in these earnings. And the reason being is I would love those put options to go up quite dramatically more. Go ahead and flip out of those and then use some of that money toward a new hedge, and then also use some of that money to maybe buy some Tesla shares under 200. So if you had asked me, what do I prefer? I would prefer the stock goes down. I prefer everybody to freak out here and those sorts of things. Now, the stock is nearly break even here going into, last couple hours of trading. Which, what does that show me? That simply shows me that people are very undecided. They're not going into this earnings bullish. They're not really going in super bearish in terms of if you wanted to go bearish and sell your shares, you've already done it at this point in time. It's not like in the past day or two people are freaking out anymore. I think people have already kind of freaked out in regards to Tesla. And so that's kind of that. And it just seems like you're not really getting any buying pressure or major selling pressure at this point in time. People are just kind of like, I don't know. We'll see. And whoever's kind of holding at this point in time are kind of the holders there, right? Alrighty, guys, let's start reacting to a few of these videos here.
Tesla's going to report tonight after the bell. Off to a rough start for the year so far. Our Phil LeBeau is here to talk about what we might expect. Some key areas that the street's looking for some clarity on.
Yeah, down 15% already this year. I mean, we're not even 30 days into the year. Like that's a pretty insane move, and we haven't even seen earnings yet.
The one number that everybody's going to be focused on, Carl, and we talk about it every quarter, gross auto margins excluding zero-emission vehicle credits. That number has been coming down at a pretty steady clip over the last couple of years. Look at the estimate for the fourth quarter, 15.7%. Back in the first quarter, it was up at 19%. Hey, a couple of years ago, I remember.
I'm scared we're even going to be able to hit that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm very scared we're even going to hit that. I'm not that confident that we're even going to hit 15.7. We'll see.
Well north of 20%. And the reason is because of what's happening in China. It is the world's largest EV market. It's a huge market for Tesla, understandably. They've got the Gigafactory in Shanghai. The pricing pressure there has been immense, and it has not let up. We saw price cuts from Tesla in the fourth quarter. That will have a direct impact on those gross auto margins. In terms of deliveries, the street wants to know if they're going to give us guidance for 2024. Remember, Tesla delivered just over 1.8 million vehicles last year. The consensus right now going into the call today is 2.1 million is what they're expecting Tesla to give for a guidance. We'll see if they give us actual guidance or if we get something a little more vague, like, well, we're going to be up, 15, 20%. We'll see during the call after the numbers when they come out. As you take a look at shares of Tesla, remember, the conference call with Elon Musk is at 5:30 this afternoon. And that's really, guys, when you start to see shares of Tesla move, depending on what he says during that call. And again, gross auto margins, excluding zero-emission vehicle credits, that's the number people will be focused.
Yeah, so past gross margins, it definitely matters. It will move the stock a little bit. What they say for deliveries for 2024, it matters a little bit. It will move the stock. But the number one thing that will move this stock up or down dramatically the next day will be, and analysts are going to beat this to death until they get an answer out of Elon Musk and the team, is are margins troughing soon? And are margins going to head back up in the back half of the year? If the management team can confirm that and say, yes, margins are going to head back up in the back half of the year, we're troughing margins in the next 1 to 2 quarters, that stock's off to the races. It matters more than anything for the stock right now. Anything, I can tell you. And if that's a yes, boom, we're flying. If it's a no, whew, people aren't going to feel comfortable owning the stock until, when I say people, I'm talking about Wall Streeters, they're not going to feel comfortable until they're confident we're troughing margins here and we're moving up from there.
For Tesla to deliver, what kind of number are we looking for, and where will the biggest buyers of Teslas be?
Yeah, I think the number that the investors are particularly going to hone in on tonight is going to be the profit margin at Tesla, and particularly automotive gross profit margin. This was a figure that, when you back out the regulatory credits that Tesla sells at, essentially, pure profit, this was a figure that was around the 30% range in early 2022. It's now kind of hovering in roughly half that level, and that's really been a cause for concern, just the persistent price cuts that we've seen Tesla make to sort of sacrifice profitability for volume. There's been some willingness, of course, to tolerate that. We did see the stock perform pretty well last year. The question is how much longer that can last, especially if we don't see some stabilization in the margins, and that's something that's going to be the topic of conversation on the call as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to delivery specific, right, because they were showing that chart of deliveries there, a lot of that's going to come down to Cybertruck. How fast can they get Cybertruck really ramped up into mass production? And if they can do that in the next 1 quarter, like let's say they do it over the next 3-4 months, I think we can go way over even 2.1. I think we can go 2.2, maybe 2.3 million in 2024 in terms of deliveries. But we're going to have to, because I can tell you they're going to be able to sell as many Cybertrucks as they can possibly produce. We got to get that one rolling quickly here.
Nelson, he's senior analyst at CFRA. Give me the big expectation for you, and maybe if there's a surprise on your mind, what you're worried about.
Sure. Thanks for having me. No, we agree with Phil's preview. We think the focus will be on gross margins and also any guidance related to 2024. Now, on the guidance, we think they might not actually provide volume guidance for the full year. They might focus more on what they think their production capacity is. But we'll see. We know Tesla's coming off, Q4 was a record quarter in terms of vehicle production and sales. And the company has a really solid earnings track record. They've only missed once in the past 11 quarters. So we're bullish on Tesla heading into this release. The stock's had a nice dip so far this year after the stock more than doubled last year, which we view as healthy price action given the massive run-up that it had in 2023.
Do you think we're going to hear anything about this idea of whether he wants to stay as the CEO of the company and how important that is going to be? Obviously, he's made these comments about AI and wanting to have more control of Tesla if, in fact, they're going to be building out AI. And if he doesn't get that control, that he might try to build that AI outside of the company and the implications there?
Whoa. Hold your horses, okay? In terms of Elon Musk being CEO of Tesla, listen, does he want to go anywhere else? The answer is no. Why would he? Listen, almost all of his net worth, or a substantial portion of his net worth, is tied up in Tesla, right? He has SpaceX kind of run on autopilot. That's great. And then I'm sure he spends still a lot of time with X. But at the end of the day, what's been his cash cow for X, right? It's been Tesla. So, his whole world has to kind of revolve with Tesla at the center. So the fact that he would leave Tesla, I don't think that's very realistic. I would say, he should get those voting shares. I have no objection with that at all.
We'd be really surprised if he addressed that on the conference call. We view those recent comments as mostly posturing, but he's in a bit of a standoff against the board. Of course, they're waiting a ruling in a Delaware court case regarding his prior compensation package. So we really view that as posturing ahead of a ruling from the court, which could come in the coming weeks or months.
And what is your take on, we sort of read a litany of headlines recently, including this Hertz news around selling some of these vehicles and the like. Do you look at that and say, part of you I hear is saying this is an opportunity in terms of just the price fall, but do you think there's a larger macro headwind challenge to Tesla? Or is it the EVs and Tesla's excluded? Is it idiosyncratic? How do you think about that?
There's no question the U.S. EV market is in a state of oversaturation today. But the good news is that if you look at the EV price premium, so the premium at which EVs sell.
Hold on. Before he goes further here. Okay, oversaturation, United States, I don't think we're oversaturated at all. I think many companies have had trouble putting out a compelling product. There's a big difference between oversaturation and putting out a compelling product, and that's why other automakers can't move their EVs, is they're not putting out a compelling enough product to the masses. The masses aren't aware enough of these products, and that's what's going on there. It has nothing to do with oversaturation, in my opinion.
If you look at the EV price premium, so the premium at which EVs sell to the average of all vehicles, in December, that premium was only 4%, down from over 30% a year ago. So EVs are coming down in price much closer to parity with gas-powered vehicles. And so we think, really the market oversaturation, the issue is more with non-Tesla EVs. That's where the demand problem is. And in December, inventories were at 114 days supply for EVs overall. That's extremely high because the historic average in terms of days supply in the U.S. is about 60 days. So, but we view that more as a problem for non-Tesla EVs. We know demand is very strong for the Cybertruck, and they face
basically a double up in terms of days of inventory. That's insane.
Problem, which is how quickly can they produce these vehicles and get them in the hands of reservation holders.
Well, Garrett, that's I've heard it a million times. People don't Jones for a EV; they Jones for a Tesla. They don't say I want an EV. They say I want a Tesla.
True.
Is that
True
ever
statement.
change?
That is true.
What would that take to say I want? What's GM? I don't even know what they make. They made those things you can't park near your house. What's that called? A Volt or a Bolt or something. What's the most popular big three EV? Has anyone bought one?
Tesla's still the dominant player.
No,
they have 55% market share.
What's the most popular big three EV?
Oh, it would be the Chevy Bolt.
What a way to end it. What a way to end it. Woo. Okay, last one up here. EV sales across America slow down, and then we're going on Twitch, baby. Pin comment down there for the big live stream. Get ready to rock and roll for that one.
The last week has been extremely eventful, but also just the last few months where we, take a look at what has happened at Tesla, the amount of price cutting that they did last year for sort of incremental gains in volume, and the extent to which that has sort of reverberated for the rest of the industry. I think we saw that in Hertz. We've seen, Ford maybe going from potentially, fearing the arrival of the Cybertruck and the potential threat that posed to the F-Series line, and perhaps not being as afraid of the sort of competitive blow that could come from that. And also, let's be honest, some of these companies really struggling with execution issues. I don't think that we can sort of absolve some of these companies of some of the failures they've had to take a Tesla on. As much as they're having some challenges of lately, they're still, really sort of in a two-horse race here with, Tesla and BYD being way out in front of the rest of the industry and making this transition to electric vehicles.
Craig, you mentioned BYD, and that's where I want to go. How much of the pullback from the electric vehicle space by American manufacturers really comes from the threat that Chinese manufacturers can sell EVs so much more cheaply, and as soon as they come to the shores of this country, prices are going to drop really considerably?
Yeah, I don't think they will come to the U.S. in part because of the trade barriers that have already been set up, and we've heard rumblings of the Biden administration, even raising tariffs that are already sort of prohibitive. I don't think the Chinese manufacturers, including BYD, really see this as making any sense trying to enter that market in the near term. But I do think that we will see, a lot of politicking around this and sort of messaging around the idea of, do we want to go the way of losing out to the Chinese? And both sides of the political aisle will sort of fight on the basis of, do we want to sort of fold to the Chinese if you're a Democrat? And on the right, do we want to go in the direction of electric vehicles when the Chinese are so dominant? And so, it will be, sort of different messaging, but both will surely, sort of cast China as the boogeyman here to either, take on or sort of avoid.
Craig, I'm struck by the fact that Ford, yes, is pushing back some of their targets targets, but they still have targets of electric vehicle adoption in a much more mainstream way. From what you gather, do you think that this is an interrupted transition to electric vehicles or just simply a delayed transition?
I think more so the latter. I think what we've seen sort of the established car makers learn is that, doing a sort of slapdash effort of taking, an existing platform, in Ford's case, only slightly altered version of the F-150 and sticking a battery in it, that is not the way to sort of make a compelling electric vehicle. And I think we saw an effort on Ford's part to really sort of, place speed ahead of anything else and really get to market ahead of, GM with the electric Silverado to take on, the likes of Rivian and the Cybertruck and, some shortcuts that were taken that led to some compromises in terms of, how well the F-150 Lightning performs. And so what we're going to see in the next
100%, and it reminds me a lot of, wow, 3 months for GM's been great, huh? It reminds me a lot of when smartphones started taking off, and you had obviously Apple with a fundamental change to what a phone looked like at that time. Right now, we think it's boring, and it's like, oh, it's the same thing every year. But at that particular time, it was a fundamental change in what a phone was, right, in the way the phone looked. But a lot of other competitors, that were traditional phone companies, they put these products together that were just not compelling at all. And a lot of them were just basically their old style of phones, just with, smart features with it and internet and those sorts of things. But it was not compelling at all to consumers. And so what ended up happening is people didn't buy those products. The BlackBerries, the Nokias, all those other guys that were the big phone companies at that time, their market share just started going down year after year. Meanwhile, Apple's market share went up massively, and it's been roughly around 50% market share for quite a while, right? And the other companies that came out of nowhere, I mean, the growth for those companies was tremendous as well, but they took a fundamentally different approach. The Samsungs and those sorts of companies that weren't even really much of a player or thought of a player, right? Became a big player in the market. So it's the same exact things happening in EVs now.
Couple of years as these car makers, bring to market, dedicated platforms that from the ground up were purpose-built to be electric. And we'll see, I think, much more compelling vehicles. The question, of course, is whether that will be enough to bring, the consumer who's proven difficult to sort of, get to come around to electric vehicles, whether that will be enough to sway them.
Yeah, and one of the big things is, where do I charge at, right? And so it's good these big automakers have just started a partner this year with Tesla. Now they're going to have to get out there and make their customer bases aware that, you can charge at any Tesla supercharger. That's going to be a whole process they got to go through, because people got to feel comfortable that if I drive a long way, I'm going to be able to supercharge a bunch of different places. And until they're confident that, that's not a good thing, right? So they need to convince their customers of that. And then they also need to convince dealers to want to move the inventory, because dealers don't really care to move the inventory. This is something I called out 5+ years ago. Dealers like to work on these internal combustion engine vehicles and all the service that goes around along with it, the oil changes and the transmission fluid you got to get changed and all these different things. You just don't have that with EVs.
We spoke to John Kerry last week, and he said that it's, quote, disinformation on why consumers are not catching up and being persuaded to electric vehicles. And at the same time, on Friday, a Biden administration official came out and said more needs to be done when it comes to the charging stations, because that is a real concern. So which one is it?
I think, honestly, it can be both here, where, there is a lot of, I mentioned the word boogeyman earlier. There's some really strange, sort of anti-EV messaging of, just how clean are these, or, this idea that you can't possibly, get by with the charging infrastructure where it is. Does there need to be a lot more progress in this regard? Absolutely. Are there people just, all over the place running out of juice and stranded by the roadside? No, that's not the case either. So, there is some truth somewhere in the middle here. I do think, the industry is going to go in this direction and needs to figure it out. I also think,
I've never in my life seen a Tesla just sitting on the side of the road. Never in my life have I seen that. And I live in Vegas, where there's a million Teslas. That's not something you see, but I see every other dang automaker on the side of the road all the dang time, every day.
Interesting to see just how much this compromise of making the transition to Tesla's charging standard will help some of these manufacturers. That was a big, deal last year with a lot of announcements, but we won't see that actually come to fruition, until the coming months. And so whether or not that will help resolve some of these charging issues for these other manufacturers will be something to watch.
Just last night, I was driving with my kids. We were driving on the highway, and there was a car on the right side of the road, and there's just massive amounts of smoke coming from kind of the engine area, and my kids are like, "Oh, what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, that's a car overheating over there, kids. So, that's something you got to deal with those sorts of vehicles, right?" Alrighty, guys, Twitch going live here in just a bit. It's going to be like a 3 to 4 hour live stream. Pin comment down there. Join me on there. Much love. See you on there in a bit, and have a great day.